ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. Germany's upcoming federal election on February 23rd marks an important political turning point as voters focus on issues like immigration and the economy. With the collapse of the traffic light coalition, the stage is set for a closely watched contest between established parties and rising challengers like the AfD. How will these dynamics shape Germany's future? Joining us today on TVP World to discuss the election is Piotr Andrzejewski from the Institute for Western Affairs. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
So first thing first, what has led to the collapse of the current coalition that's described in the media as the traffic light coalition, and how is that shaping the current political landscape?
Well, I could answer very simply saying it's the economy. It was the failings of the economy for the last 2 years where Germany has entered recession and probably will enter recession in 2024. It put strains on the budgetary situation in Germany, limiting spending possibilities for the government, for the German government, or the so-called Ampel coalition government, the traffic light coalition. And the liberals from the Freedom Democratic Party, the FDP, under the leadership of Christian Lindner, have devised a plan of exiting the coalition. They were polling very low. They are still polling very low, or they're just on the electoral threshold of 5%. They are polling between 4 and 5%. They are fighting for their political life. And they have devised a plan to exit the coalition, make a speedy exit, and be prepared for an earlier campaign. It was a very risky move because, of course, the Chancellor Scholz got the wind of these actions, and he sacked Lindner and the AfD party the day before they were supposed to launch the so-called D-Day operation. This is how it was called in their strategic paper. And, well, what was the point of discontenting the coalition? Where, of course, there's the political calculation of the liberals that it would be much easier for them to actually pass the electoral threshold of the 5% if they would be in an opposition party and not burdened by the failings of the last years of the Ampel coalition government. At the same time, it was the economy. The FDP had a completely different view on how to stimulate growth in the failing German economy than the coalition partners. The Greens and the Social Democrats, especially, there was a huge point of discontent between Christian Lindner and the Minister of Economy and Climate, Robert Habeck, stemming from the Green Party. They had completely two different visions. Habeck wanted to subsidize the German economy, and Lindner didn't want to hear a word about subsidies. No more debt. He wanted to pull the so-called debt brake, a very important fiscal policy in Germany embedded in the constitution, and at the same time lowering taxes. And his vision was to boost more entrepreneurial spirit among the Germans and German companies, so that they would generate the growth. And as such, the coalition was unable to produce a cohesive strategy or policy to stimulate growth in Germany. There were very minor movements, and basically the government did not do anything in the last 2 years, and such political action was direly needed in the last 2 years, as I said, because Germany entered recession in 2023 and probably has entered recession in 2024. So it was necessary, and the coalition simply did not deliver. So this was the major point of breaking.
Right, like you mentioned, perhaps the political inaction is what led to the collapse of the current coalition. Now, going on to this election in February 23rd, we do know that, like you mentioned, economic challenges is something that direly needs addressing. What are some of the candidates' proposal for tackling Germany's economic issues, and how do you think they're resonating with the voters?
Well, obviously, we have the most important party leading the polls now is the Christian Democratic Union under the leadership of Friedrich Merz. And, well, it has to be said that the view of economical policy of the CDU right now is pretty similar to that of Christian Lindner's to the FDP party. And as such, I'm pretty sure that the CDU and CSU parties in Germany would love for the FDP to be their coalition partner. Several politicians of the Christian Democrats even said that it would be amazing if the Liberals would receive 7 or 8%, because that would allow them to enter the government, to form a government of two parties, yes, simply of the Christian Democrats and the Free Democratic Party, and it would be the perfect scenario. However, the political reality is that this is probably not going to happen. There is a huge risk that the Liberals will not enter the Bundestag, will not enter the new parliament, and the Christian Democrats would have to form a coalition with the Social Democrats, which is a suboptimal scenario for them, but they are prepared for it, and it would require more compromises. Well, of course, every party has its own issues, but it has its own propositions for for the German economy. But as we are in the middle of the electoral campaign, but for now, what's the most important thing is the presentation of the leaders. Yes, the SPD party chose Olaf Scholz, despite Boris Pistorius, the Minister of Defense, being the most popular politician in Germany right now. The Greens had nominated Robert Habeck, who's trying to pose himself as a candidate for the people of Germany. He want to be a little bit less formal. We have, of course, Friedrich Merz coming from the Christian Democrats, and just a few days ago, the Alternative für Deutschland, the far-right party, has nominated Alice Weidel, and she has this wonderful political motto saying Alice für Deutschland, which, at least in my ears, it sounds very similar to Alles für Deutschland, which is a slogan coming from a much darker times. I think she's playing here deliberately with some far right imagery, even reaching in this kind of smart intellectual way to some neo-Nazi movements, and this is how. But she's doing it in such a way that nothing can be done legally, of course. So now we are focusing more on the lead in this part of the campaign. We're focusing more on the leaders and the presentation of the leaders, the worldviews of them actually. And we have, of course, the biggest thing discussed in Germany in the last few days was the support of the tech mogul Elon Musk towards AfD and Alice Weidel. He has posted an op-ed in Die Welt supporting this party, and of course he also had this very long interview with Alice Weidel where they presented their worldviews, which were dissimilar in several aspects. But it is noteworthy that we have a billionaire from the States interfering in the German elections, which causes uproar in the traditional media and, of course, among the major parties in Germany.
Right, and like you mentioned, the AfD party is on the rise. Speaking of coalition building, of course, the mainstream parties have already vowed not to form coalition with the AfD party. But seeing that they are gaining in popularity, how realistic is it to kind of completely wall off a very big segment of the electorate in order to not form this coalition? Is this sustainable if AfD actually does become the kingmaker?
Well, it's a long way for this to happen. Well, the German political system has been designed by the Allies after the Second World War with the Grundgesetz, the German constitution, so that any more radical party will have a very hard time in forming a government. This is the way that the German political system works. And for now, I don't see a possibility for AfD to hold power or any offices on the federal level. It's simply not. However, we can just move a little bit south to the German neighbor in the south, Austria, where exactly what you just said has happened. We had three parties trying to form a coalition, namely Christian Democrats, Social Democrats, and the Liberals from the Neos Party, and they failed to do so. And now the far right party, the Freedom Party of Austria, has been put on a mission by the Austrian president to form the government But the difference between the Austrian Freedom Party and the AfD is the level of support. The FPÖ, the Freedom Party of Austria, was first in the election, and AfD is second. They have only 20%, and it is simply not enough. They have to gain more. And I have been studying the polls of the German elections, and we can see that from the beginning of this year and the support of Elon Musk happening, there is a slight rise of popularity of AfD. They have reached, I think, 16% half a year ago of support. Now they're polling at 20%, and at the same time, the Christian Democrats are slightly falling from 33 to 31, and the FDP party, the Liberals, are also falling a little bit down. And we also have to look at another party from the left, the Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht, the Union of Sarah Wagenknecht, which also is losing support. It's also an anti-establishment party, only mixing this nationalistic and left economical political program, but it's also failing. And I think that the loss of support for the PSV party is feeding into the slight growth of popularity of the AfD. So they want to be the main anti-establishment party, but for now, I don't see any possibility for them to be in the government on the federal level.
Right.
So
And
we don't have to worry about that.
right, speaking of polling numbers, we also saw that immigration topping voter concerns. Do you think that this will be a very big issue going into the election? And how are the mainstream parties addressing this very delicate issue?
Well, we already saw that the Ampel coalition, the coalition of the traffic lights, has already toughened its stance on immigration in Germany, has reintroduced border controls, and is sending back migrants to Poland, to France, to Switzerland, causing, of course, discontent. On the European level, this unilateral action made by Germany is raising questions whether the Schengen area is still viable, because this is breaking one of the rules of the Schengen area in the EU, namely the free movement of people. So already we can see that even the left, the Social Democrats, because this decision was made by Nancy Faeser, the Minister for Internal Affairs, stemming from the Social Democratic Party of Germany, and we can see that the AfD has made a success in Germany simply by moving the so-called Overton window much more to the right. Things are acceptable by the general public and by the politicians that were not acceptable 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So we can see that Christian Democrats have a tougher stance on migration. Even the Social Democrats have a tougher stance on migration, and only the Linke Partei, the Left Party, and the Greens are still open. They still have this narrative of human rights protections and have this pro-migration stances. But that's it. Yes, that the change has already happened in Germany. Mainstream parties are taking a tougher stance on migration.
And last but not least, do you think that is going to be the trend going forward? Like you mentioned, with the Overton window moving to the right, perhaps these mainstream parties will start slowly adopting more right-wing positions than they used to.
Yeah, this has already happened. It's when Friedrich Merz took power in the Christian Democratic Union, it was obvious that he's going to move much more to the right. He has this legacy of Angela Merkel. She was the German chancellor for 4 terms, 16 years, and she always sought support in the political center. And this is a thing of the past. Now, Friedrich Merz has moved much more to the right, and I think this strategy is giving results because it was first in the polls, above 30% of support, and is managing to keep the AfD from becoming first, because this is now when the Alternative for Deutschland is the second party in the polls. Of course, they have the ambitions to be the first one, and the Christian Democrats, they have to mitigate this political danger, and they have been doing this successfully, taking some parts from the AfD program, but introducing them in a much softer and more civilized manner. And this will be the strategy for the German right for the next years, I believe. This is and we will see if it works. It didn't actually work in Austria, where the far right surpassed the traditional Christian Democratic Party in the polls, and we will see if it. But in Germany, this will probably not happen, at least not in the foreseeable future. This is my opinion.
Right. So, like you mentioned, we do have to observe and see how the situation develops. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.